about who you are and can manage your own emotions in each situation, know how you're going to act or react. It helps the emotions of your team.
It's not drawing a barrier of, I can only learn from certain people and I can only be called out by certain people. It's like, hey, I'm willing to receive from everybody.
Only can, in my opinion, you can only do that as you start to build relationships. You can only be effective at that as you start to build relationships.
Welcome to Brewing Better Leaders, a podcast focused around building up and equipping leaders with the knowledge and skills to lead others in excellence. I'm Bill Montgomery, CEO of River Radio Ministries. On today's episode, I sit down with Yohana Hill, Tree of Life Christian School's Chief Advancement Officer. We're at Third Way Cafe, and we're going to discuss emotional intelligence, navigating conflict, and finding humility in leadership. You know, you've been in the education world, you've been in the sports training world. Leadership, I feel like, is something that has intersected with about everything that you've done career-wise.
It has. I'm not sure if you even know this, but my master's degree is in sports leadership. So even educationally, that's something that I find important as well.
Yeah, well, and I love that, and I didn't know that, but that just, again, dovetails so perfectly into this and something that, you know, we've got somebody that's educated a little more on the topic.
I don't know about that. So well, I'm glad you had me. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, tell me a little bit about your choice even of that as your master's program. Why did you choose sports leadership?
Yeah, it's a great question. Interestingly enough, a lot of it had more to do with what I was doing professionally at the time. Was involved in sales and sales management. I was traveling extensively. And this was about the time that online education was becoming a thing.
Yeah.
And I decided I needed something else to spend my time doing as opposed to sitting in hotel rooms around the country. So Duquesne University in Pittsburgh had just established an online sports leadership program. I've got the business and sports leader in sports training as well too, and I had a desire at the time to potentially get into being an athletic director. So I thought that program would be a good fit and another way to kind of occupy my time.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Any strong takeaways from that maybe you didn't know going into it, or some insights that you came out of that with?
Yeah, I don't know necessarily from a leadership perspective with the program itself. I got a chance to be exposed to a lot of great leaders that were also a part of the program. The sports leadership area at the college level or at the master's degree level wasn't something that had existed much prior to that. So some of the folks I got a chance to participate in class with were pretty significant leaders. So the former associate athletic director at Ohio State, who's now the athletic director, I believe, at the University of Washington, was a part of my program.
Oh, wow.
Someone in leadership at Under Armour was a part of the program. So just some other really phenomenal leaders that I got a chance to interact with. And that was probably the biggest takeaway, from that standpoint.
Oh, yeah. A lot of good people just to bounce ideas off of and learn from. I love that. Yeah. As you know, with our podcast here, we are really just exploring leadership traits, character traits that those that are joining us have really found to be important in their leadership journey and things they do. And I'd love to just hear from you, maybe what you have found to be very important in your journey.
Absolutely. So foundationally, as a person of faith, James 1:19, quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to anger, is something that I have found to be really foundational from how I live my life as a whole, but definitely want to make sure that that's something that I take into my leadership practices as well. And then just really more from the standpoint of practically, trust, I think, is extremely important. So the ability to establish trust early in leadership, listening, active listening, the ability to listen to understand as opposed to respond, I think is important. Communication is key. So making sure that you're communicating effectively and clearly. And then with that communication, also making sure that you're setting clear expectations and vision. And also for me, it's important to communicate how I am in it with my team, and I'm there to support them as well too. And I guess a few other ones that I would mention, I think it's three, a couple other ones I'll just throw out there would be the ability to let others know their value and their importance, and really just a respect for other people. in that process. And then I'd say emotional intelligence, which is one that we don't talk a ton about, but I feel like that's one that has helped me to really kind of be a successful leader in the ways that I've been called to be. And, there's just a few from that standpoint. And the final one I would say, and it's one that I try to take to heart a ton, is just continuing to be a learner. So always looking for opportunities to learn, and that requires humility. So making sure that I'm humble enough in that process to be able to learn from others as I'm leading others as well.
Yeah. It's funny because as you touch on those, I think the majority of those things have come up just in conversations I've had in the last week or last couple weeks. It's interesting. I was in a conversation today talking about a large event that somebody put on, and they were talking about one of the past leaders that was no longer there. Okay. In moments, they said they would have difficulty getting return volunteers, and I said, tell me more about that. And they said, the person that was leading a lot of that was a good human being, somebody they liked, right. But in moments of stress, they suddenly stopped that quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to get angry, and it just shifted in stress. I'd love for you to maybe talk a little bit about, as you talk about that, how do you remain that way, both in times of, when things are going easy, but then when things get tough, how do you maintain that same level?
Yeah, it's a great question. And really a lot of it goes back for me for past experiences.
Yeah.
So, I do have a pretty reserved personality, which, I like to say it's quiet leadership. And I've heard the term recently, courageous, quiet leadership. And I do think that piece is important because sometimes people will mistake quiet leadership for submissive or indecisive leadership.
Yeah.
I definitely don't consider myself to be a submissive or indecisive leader.
Sure.
Just quiet and reserved more in personality from that standpoint. So getting a chance to really know who I am, which kind of ties back into that emotional intelligence piece, but also know who those are that I'm leading or working with from that standpoint and perspective. But for me, a lot of that has come from past experiences. Early on in my leadership journey, 25 years or so ago, unfortunately, I got a chance to have some experiences that really tested and challenged me as a leader that really have kind of shaped who I am today as a leader. So, some of those experiences were significant in a way to where most of the things that I experience today pale in comparison to the things that I go through. So when you've been through some things from that standpoint, I think other things start to have a little bit different perspective.
Yeah, that was literally the word I was thinking, is that perspective over time. All of a sudden you go, this thing that we feel like is a big thing right now, it's not.
Yeah,
it's not.
Absolutely. So that's something that, obviously over time and just experiences, I've had a chance to really dig into a little bit more and learn more about myself over time as a leader as well, too, the good and the bad in that process.
Yeah. And I really feel like that dovetails so nicely when you talked about trust and, somebody that's a good listener, somebody that is not, reacting to things negatively. You have a lot more trust of that person as your leader because of just how they interact with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've heard the saying, they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Yes.
And that's something that I think is extremely important for me as a leader. I try to dig in and get a chance to know those that I'm leading as much as I possibly can, establish and build that relationship. So when times do get tough or there are challenging situations, not only as hopefully I've communicated effectively as to what responsibilities are, how we're going to handle a specific situation, but also that they know I'm in it with them and there's a trust factor that's been established to say that we're going to go take this hill together.
Yeah. Any practical advice on, maybe you're a new leader or maybe you're like, well, I don't know my people as well as I would like, just some practical ways you can get to know them better in the construct of the work environment?
Good question. I think asking questions, which is pretty simple to do, but a lot of times when we move into a leadership role, we feel like we're the ones who are supposed to be giving all the answers, but we're not necessarily asking the questions. So I think as a new leader going into it, asking questions, finding out more about the people that you're actually leading. And then also, I think transparency, humility, vulnerability, for me as a leader is important. But I think those are the type of things that help not only a new leader, but a seasoned leader as well.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that's really good. The question asking is so important, and I've found too, because sometimes it's like I'll ask a question and then maybe my memory fails me.
Sure.
After that is even just jot that down, or hey, something's going on this weekend. With somebody, jot a note on Monday, ask them about the thing, because we all don't have amazing memories, or we talk to a lot of people, and just that follow up, like, oh my goodness, he remembered we had this thing, or my family was doing this, or Hey, you. Yes, you. That's who I'm talking to. When is the last time you thanked that coworker, that assistant, that parent, that teacher, that mentor, that person that changed the trajectory of your career, or that person that helps you get things done every day, the one that has saved you? Maybe it's a parent, maybe it's a spouse, maybe it's one of your kids, but you need to say thank you. Well, give them a gift that they not only deserve, but a gift that they are going to love, and that is from my friends, Dolce Sweets. Their espresso chocolate, my personal favorite here at Brewing Better Leaders, but they have chocolate, they've got amazing, amazing gifts. You are going to be pleased, and more importantly, the person that you get the gift for is going to know that you care about them because you got a gift from Dolce Sweets. And for my viewers, my listeners, 15% off when you use the code BREW. 15% off, use the code BREW at Dolce Sweets, DULCI. I promise you, they will be thrilled. You can thank me later.
That is something that I try to do as much as possible. And honestly, if we weren't doing this podcast in this setting, you would see either my phone or a notebook or notepad with me, because I try really hard to make sure that I can remember things about those that I'm interacting with that I can reference back to, if it's a phone call or a text or the next time that we would get together. And it's like, oh man, he remembered this about my spouse, or this about our kids, or this particular situation that we were going through. And you realize that really makes a connecting point with people, especially those that you're leading, for sure. So that is definitely something that I try to do as much as I possibly can. I would say as I'm getting a little bit older, it gets harder to remember some of those things. So I definitely try to write down as many of those things as I can.
Oh, that's good. You were talking when you kind of had your list of characteristics, one at the end, and it just speaking of remembering, emotional intelligence. I've heard that, and it was funny. I was talking with a leader inside of an organization and asking about one of their younger managers, and the thing she mentioned was, she said, for one of the younger guys on our leadership team, he actually has very unusually high emotional intelligence, which I thought, whoa, that's kind of that's a high praise.
Absolutely.
For what are some ways you can develop, if you feel, and maybe even your definition of emotional intelligence and how you can develop that a little bit more.
Well, and I need to go back. You asked me about my experiences and some things I learned from a leadership perspective at Duquesne for my master's degree. And I would say that was probably one of the bigger takeaways. Honestly, at that time, it was the first time I had even heard the term emotional intelligence, or some call it emotional quotient, or EQ.
Yes.
And I had some folks who have mentioned to me that they thought I had somewhat high emotional intelligence. I don't have people telling me that about my IQ, but I do with my EQ. So that was the first time that I had ever heard that term, and it was part of one of the courses that I took. And for me, that's really just having a good understanding of and managing your emotions in all types of situations. And then in addition to that, knowing and understanding how other people react and interact and what their emotions will be in specific situations. But you only can, in my opinion, you can only do that as you start to build relationships. You can only be effective at that as you start to build relationships from that standpoint. And I've recognized that in times of conflict or challenge, when you have a good understanding not only about who you are and can manage your own emotions in each situation and know how you're going to act or react, it helps the emotions of your team as well. So I found, when I'm in control of where my emotions are and knowing, what that's going to look like in each and every situation, that my team tends to be able to connect from that standpoint too. And then it's also important for me to really have a good understanding of what they are from an emotional standpoint, how they're going to interact in specific situations as well too, especially when we're trying to come together on some challenging or hard situations, and knowing who you can count on for different aspects of whatever that situation may be.
Wow. I love how that connects back to what we first talked about, is because when you're a good listener, when you're in control of your emotions, when you have built trust, you have so much more control, and then you're going to be able to emotionally relate better with people. And even if they're not as in control of their emotions, you're going to be able to control that a lot more on yourself, and probably keep the situation at a much calmer level.
Sure. So you hope that your tone and the way that you handle that situation, your demeanor, is what kind of overrides it when someone else may not be in as much control as they would like to in a particular situation.
Yeah. No, that's really good. Probably the last thing you said in your initial list, I'd love to maybe make as our last point, and you were talking about kind of being a lifelong learner. And always being a learner, kind of no matter what level, because you could go, well, I've got this master's degree, I don't really need to learn anymore, I've done the work, and yet here you are still like, hey, I'm going to keep learning. What are some ways that you have found to continue being a learner, even when you're outside of school and maybe not using that as the catalyst for your learning environment?
Yeah, I think for me, it's continuing to ask questions and surrounding myself with people who are smarter than me, have different experiences and different knowledge that I do. And it's not hard to do, from the standpoint of I like to get in a variety of different environments, and you never know who you're going to learn from. For me, it could be the custodian in the building you work in, as well as the CEO from the corporation that's next door to our organization. So always continually asking questions, trying to make sure that I humble myself enough to understand that I don't know it all, and that I can improve in different spaces and in different situations, and being open to anyone being able to provide something for me. I have a situation, I don't know, maybe 8 months ago or so, to one of the young men that I mentor called me out on something, and I didn't like it initially, and I wanted to kind of push back a little bit, but he was actually right, and it was something that I learned from in a particular situation, and a lot of it had more to do with the busyness of my schedule and some communication misses from that standpoint. But he was actually right in the situation, and I could have pushed back, but I knew that it wasn't the right thing to do, and I actually learned from that situation. And this is someone that would probably consider me a mentor. So I'm supposed to be feeding into him and providing him this insight, but in that particular situation, he was able to do that for me.
Boy, I love that, because it's not drawing a barrier of, I can only learn from certain people, and I can only be called out by certain people. It's like, hey, I'm willing to receive from everybody and any input, and I'm going to take it on the value of, is it worth, is there value there? Is there worth there? And can I learn from that?
Absolutely.
I think that's fantastic. I've had an issue recently where, kind of got called out by somebody, several of us did, by somebody on our team. And you're in that moment, you're like, oh, this is uncomfortable. And you're like, but it's right.
Exactly.
And I need to have a little humility and accept that and take that. And I think that those experiences help you to be able to do that
Absolutely.
better, more and more. Well, I'm grateful for our conversation. Any, for somebody that is on their leadership journey, any last comments, insights, or, maybe places that have been helpful to you on your journey that you might recommend? What closing thoughts would you have?
Yeah, and I think it looks different for all of us. And I think, kind of my final thoughts on it would be, leadership looks different for each of us. And I mentioned, I have a more quiet, reserved form or style of leadership, and that's really just more who I am and my personality. And you'll find more people that might be a little bit more extroverted or a little bit more vocal or louder. in their leadership style, but it doesn't mean that both can't be effective. And I think really trying to dig in and finding people who have similar qualities and characteristics that you do, and then asking them questions or finding out a little bit more about what their leadership style is. But it does look different, in my opinion, for each of us.
Yeah.
And it's just figuring out, who am I being called to be as this leader, and then continue to move forward with it.
Oh, that's fantastic. I appreciate that very much. And I guess I would just say, for those that are watching or listening, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Brewing Better Leaders, or find us on your podcast platform, wherever you might be listening. Rate and review, because that certainly helps others to find us, or even share this episode. But we are grateful that you have tuned in, that you're listening, and that you are on the leadership journey with us. Very grateful for you. Thank you so much.